Today we have a very, very special guest. We have Sarath Davala. He's the president of Bean, and I'll give him now the opportunity to introduce himself to us.
Thank you, Ahmed. It's really wonderful that you're doing BN podcast, and uh, and thank you for inviting me here. My name is Sarath Davala. I am a sociologist by training, and I live in India. Apart from my professional work, I volunteer with BN, and I'm on the executive committee of BN, and yeah, that's it.
So before we go more into detail, can I ask you, because probably we haven't discussed it here yet, can you tell our listeners what's BN?
Well, BN is a Basic Income Earth Network. It's a kind of a network of individuals and institutions, essentially. It was founded by a group of academics in Europe in 1986. Um, I mean, if preceding this founding of BN, if I give you that at that time, it was Basic Income Europe Network. You will get a sense of who these people are. Two of them who are professors, Professor Philip Wamperi and Professor Robert van der Veen from Holland, and Philip is from Belgium. These two professors, they wrote a very interesting article called Basic Income, A Capitalist Road to Communism. So you can imagine the 80s was it was a boiling point, and there was a major disillusionment with the socialist world, within the socialist world. And, by the end of 80s, the Soviet system crumbled. Anyway, so those were the momentous periods in history, in our political history. They founded this organization, and then they started a newsletter, which was like by post. It was sent to different friends. It's a group of friends, basically. Well, from there, I think sometime the middle of 2004 or 2005, they made it Basic Income Earth Network. Since then, it's called Earth Network because people from Brazil, people from Japan, people from other parts of the world were interested in basic income, and academic discussion was happening at that time. Still, it was not like today. It's in the mainstream. Politicians are talking. Everybody's talking about it. So technically, legally, it's an educational charity based in United Kingdom. Its main mandate is to it's an education charity, so it's to educate people or spread, promote, or open conversations on the idea of basic income. So that's what has been happening, and that's what we are doing now. And it has a news service where you give on the website. We give a regular news, and we have annual congresses, BN Congress every year, and this year it's going to be in South Korea.
And can I ask what do you do in your position?
I at the moment I spend part of my time for BN, for the developing BN. Another part of time I am coordinating and directing a basic income pilot in India. I'm also doing a small micro pilot. So this big pilot in India is we are giving a basic income to 350 families of the waste collectors in 5 settlements, urban settlements in the city of Hyderabad. And we are giving for 18 months. And now we are studying. We have done already the baseline in the beginning. Now midline was over. Now we are by December of this year, we are going to do the endline study. So that takes quite a lot of my time because one is monitoring the project itself, the other is to monitor the research part. Yeah.
I want to hear more from you about that project. But before that, we learned in the last episode more about like our audience learned from Dr. Guy standing about what's an universal basic income. Now I want to ask you, what got you interested like into UBI? When was the first time you heard about it, and like how did it interest you?
Yeah, well, see, I was teaching in a business school till 2000, way back for about 7, 8 years after I finished my PhD. Then I was not liking the teaching job so much. So I wanted to work with people, with organizations. So particularly, I wanted to work with trade unions. So there was one important trade union in India, that's the Self-Employed Women's Association. So I wanted to volunteer with them. So I quit my job and moved into the non-profit sector. And that is where I used all my research skills in terms of evaluating programs and mostly the poverty alleviation programs. So when I was working with SEVA, the Women's Trade Union, in 2010, they came and with an idea and asked me that let us experiment with unconditional cash transfers if they can be a good alternative to the current welfare system that we have. So I was quite shocked. I said, how can you give people money without any conditions? And I'm a sociologist, and sociologists, we believe that we can engineer society, social engineering. That we have to design everything and then we have to ensure that it's in our control. But now looking back, I was so mistaken that, but then I said, okay, let's do it because I was getting a job. So, okay, so that's how I entered. But we did this Madhya Pradesh pilot study in 8 villages, actually 9 villages. So in those 9 villages, so we, along with the statistical survey, we also did ethnography, which means that a lot of us, many of the research team members, we actually stayed in the villages to actually see what happens to people when they get an unconditional income regularly for 18 months. That time we gave about 18 months.
How much did you give
Um,
them?
we gave them about 300 rupees, which we calculated as a top up of like something like 20% over the poverty line at that time. It's a small amount of money, but in a village, it mattered a bit, quite a bit per individual. It's about
So it would be like $100 in the US or so now, right?
no, 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 not $100. It was like $5, $6.
No, no, no. I mean like not with the conversion rate, but with the local prices.
Yeah, a local prices. Yeah, it's a 300 rupees. Well, our poverty line is half a dollar. At that time was half a dollar a day. If your consumption is less than half a dollar a day, per capita consumption is less than half a dollar a day, then you are poor. That was the definition. So, so what we calculated that we are giving 20% of the half a dollar, 20% of the poverty line as a top up because we are not removing any existing benefits. So that's how we calculated. So, but now we are giving 5 times more, 1,000 rupees we are giving per individual in the current Hyderabad project. So there's also inflation. We are also calculating in a different way. So on and so forth. We can, if you want, you can ask me later about how that calculation happens. So that's the yeah that's how I got in. And what I saw in the villages was so dramatic, so different, so positive from the point of view of people's lives. I was really convinced that this is something really good idea in order to improve people's lives. So since then, I've been almost 100% or maybe more than 100% with the idea and working, doing different kinds of things with related to basic income.
Okay, so now, like you said, it was very, very dramatic. Now you have to describe the change that you saw. Like, you have to talk more about it. Like, tell us, what did you see?
Yeah, I mean, there are many things actually. See, prima facie, when you have an externally designed program by the policymakers, you have very clear targets and conditions and all that. Then when you evaluate a program like that, you have one story to tell about development. But when you do a basic income, if you're 100 houses, there are 100 stories, because each one decides how they want to do development for themselves. So it is a kind of it's a pure bottom up development model. Like it's like those that irrigation, what you call, every plant gets those drops of water. So people get to decide what they want to do, and people are very, very responsible and very careful when with the money. We always have very wrong notions about people, particularly the poor, that they will waste the money, they will not come to work and all that. But that's not true. So, for example, if you know as a student or as a young man, you know the day you got your fellowship, you know that you're going to get this fellowship for another 3 years. I mean, it blows your mind initially, and it makes you feel very secure over a period of time. And it changes. It's not about what you buy with that money or what you do with that money, but the kind of state of mind it creates. It creates a sense of security, number one. It also creates a sense of um, uh, most important is that it makes you feel secure and improves the quality of your mind. Then, as we say, the poor, their time horizon is very limited. They can think only about 1 month or 2 months. If it's a farmer, he will think for 3 months. But when you do this and say that for 18 months, you're going to have some basic money coming to you without any conditions, you actually improve their time horizon. Okay. Slowly, after 2, 3 months, they begin to plan. For example, if you take a farmer, at that time we saw only farmers. Now they begin to say, okay, the next season, sowing season is coming from 3 months from now. Usually, at that time, before the season begins, I go to the money lender to borrow money, and then I either pay back money with a lot of interest, or I pledge to give my produce to the money lender. Now, but here he says, okay, let me save. So there are 6 people in the family. They pull all that money, and then they save for 3 months. So when we give money, I'm saying 1,000 rupees per head we are giving, and 500 rupees per child. Now, how does 1x become 28x? I'll tell you. That's the multiplier effect. 1x becomes 1x becomes 28x. So there are 6 people in the family. Okay? There are 6 people in the family. 1 becomes 6x. Okay?
Okay.
And then the 6x, they save for 3 months.
Yeah.
That is 18x already. Okay. Now, when you have 18x in your hand, you are very empowered. So you can easily go to your neighbor and borrow 10x, 5 and 5. Yeah. Okay. Because they know that you have the credit worthiness. They know that everybody is getting this money. So you can repay back the money. So you have 28x there. And soft loan, it is not even a high interest loan. So 28x, you deploy it into a land which you were not cultivating earlier. Now you said, okay, let me cultivate this land. So uncultivable land or non-performing assets begin to perform. That's how the production, the productivity has enormously increased in the village. And the livestock completely doubled. If you had 500 cows, they became 1,000 cows, because people immediately put the money together, go and buy an animal. Because having a goat in a village like where we were there, it's like having money in the bank, because they have a forest around, so they can feed them so easily, and then they can sell them in the market in 3 months. And goats reproduce twice a year, fortunately and mercifully.
So the economy of the villages has grew a lot.
Yeah, exactly. So that is because, I mean, nobody is telling them what to do. They have decided what to do, and that's how the choices they make. See, it was not a very big amount of money. It was a small amount of money what we gave. Okay. But then they try the multiplier effect that comes and they make small choices. You are predisposed to put your child to a better school. Okay. You're
Mhm.
predisposed already. You're planning or you're desiring. Then when this happens, this gives the last push to make the change. So you make a choice. You move from an employer, you are not liking this employer. You're saying that I must change my employer. He's not good. He's not paying me properly. He's exploiting me. So you have the desire to move away, but you don't have the courage to move away. Okay, we are on the situation all the time. So this gives the last push and say, okay, leave this employer and go to a slightly better employer. So the change is very, very incremental and minimal, but substantial change. It could
Do you
be like we also give to women equally. I mean, it's an individual, basic income is individual. We give to women. So women also, if they're in a bad relationship, they can move out if they
so we
decide.
can say that UBI is a feminist project also.
Sorry, UBI is?
Is also a feminist project to more gender equality.
Yeah, I mean, it promotes gender equality because it gives autonomy to women.
Mhm.
But there's also a feminist critique of basic income saying that it may push women back into domestic and care roles away from the labor market. But we don't see evidence of that kind of a thing. Women, some women have quit the labor market, but they become entrepreneurs at home because they had money in hand. They bought animals and they looked after animals and earned money through that, through milk business, or they opened a shop. That's what they did in the villages. Yeah. So I would say definitely it definitely contributes to gender equality.
So it's like it helps poor people into becoming. It helps like poor people. It helps like marginalized people. It helps farmers. It helps all those people to become more independent, to have more freedom, right?
Definitely. I mean, see, when you say that it is individual, you get it in your bank account and you have control over it to the extent your system, your society allows that control, then definitely it promotes freedom of individuals and freedom of the households on the whole. It does.
Uh, mhm.
It does promote the freedom. Yeah.
So can I ask you, like, do you remember like any specific examples of families or people whose lives changed because of UBI? Do you remember like any specific examples?
Yeah, like in some of villages, we saw there were bonded laborers, which means that you borrow. There were nearby brick kilns, brick making factories, very rustic brick making factories. They're not factory, but they're making brick making units. There is a landlord there, and who offers advance money. He offers you upfront some money. So people use that money for buying grains or buying some function or some expense, and then they go and give their labor and pay back that money through giving labor. So they don't get paid by them. They are given food by the landlord. They don't get paid. They don't see money at all. Such people. So those people, the entire family goes actually, man, woman, children, everybody goes and
Children
lives
too?
on that. Everybody goes and lives there and go give their labor and then repay the loan and then come back. So to come back, if they come back in between, if they want to come back, they they again have to borrow from the landlord to buy their groceries when they come back home for a week or 1 week or 1 month. So usually what happens is that some members of the family live there, some members live back home and do agriculture at home. Now, in such situations also, the people get into a debt trap. They can never get out of the debts. So we have seen some of these people withdrawing from such jobs, which is a very positive
Yeah,
thing from breaking away from the bonded labor. So that was a very positive thing we have seen. We have seen many women becoming entrepreneurs. As a result, when you become an entrepreneur, you are really empowered. You're not like a dependent on somebody else. Okay.
definitely.
So we have seen those things happening. I mean, there are several examples I can give you. For example, one important change that happened was that usually in these villages, farmers are both laborers, agricultural laborers, which means they sell their labor for a wage, and also they own a patch of land. It could
Okay.
be 1 acre or half a
Mhm.
hectare or one-fourth of a hectare, you know.
Mhm.
So because they don't have capital and they can't keep borrowing, they don't cultivate their land. So they keep shifting. If they have money, they cultivate, but otherwise they don't cultivate. They depend entirely on wage labor. So when we asked in the baseline, they said, how much time do you spend in as a cultivator and as a laborer?
Mhm.
Okay. So the data showed us that I spend 60% of my time average as a wage laborer and 40% of my time as a cultivator, or even less. Average, I'm saying. There are some people who don't cultivate at all, even though they have land. Now, by the end of the study, it reversed completely.
So it became
60% of the time was being spent cultivation and 40% as wage laborers. So they reduced going to the labor market and they started cultivating their own land, which means they get grain and their land is cultivated and they are able to buy seeds, all the agricultural inputs, okay, and they don't have to go to the money lender. So it's a win-win situation. So what we say normally, we concluded that the emancipatory value of a basic income is several times more than the monetary value because
and
things add up.
and were like there any side effects or any bad effects you noticed during your pilot studies?
I don't know. I mean, look. When we are studying, we are actually only after the study we say something is good or something is bad. You see, we're there. We are actually noticing the change that is happening, the change, and what is the cumulative change that is happening. So much of it we saw it as productive. I mean, a lot of people say if you see, people have withdrawn a little from the labor market, but then for a good reason, which
To
is
become
yeah.
entrepreneurs.
Yeah, they became entrepreneurs. They became cultivators. You know, they're using their land that is laying fallow is now being cultivated. Um, I mean, people talk constantly ask me this question about the drunkenness. People have will use if you don't put conditions, people will drink more. Has it happened in the villages? No, because we have asked the village heads and we have noticed every village will have a handful of drunkards, definitely
Mhm.
people who are dependent on alcohol. And beginning of the study, the same number was there. End of the study, the same number was there. So it practically didn't matter on that particular metric if anybody is asking that question. So as far as I'm concerned, I feel that it contributes to positive forces rather than to any negative forces.
And what was like the public opinion about the idea, and what did like the heads of the villages think about it? Like the public opinion first only in the village, and after that, like the public opinion in the state and in the country.
You see, we have inherited from the industrial ethos, industrial society that we are. Now we are post-industrial.
Mhm.
That you can never get anything free. Everything you have to work for. Okay, but it's an irony that all the children of rich people get everything free. So we are so blind about that part of. But then the ethos is that you have to work hard. You have to work to earn. Otherwise, you can't get anything free.
You
But
have to
then the
work or you
sun,
have to inherit.
yes. So you have to inherit or you have to work. So yeah, as human beings, we have inherited. We have sunlight, which is free. The rain comes, it is free, isn't it? The oxygen is free. We don't have to pay for it. Imagine a time when you have to pay for it also. Yeah. So that
I
is
guess
unconditional.
I guess there are some people who would pay or would sell the money, the oxygen
I
if they
know,
had the
to
opportunity.
go and sit in the oxygen bars, right? Yeah. So similarly, we can have a society where the basic necessities are fulfilled, like the way sunlight is there free for you. You see, you inherit as a human being, you inherit, because all the technology is not produced by a handful of people. It is produced by people, and it is meant for humanity. Okay, if you take that view, I think we do, all of us have to inherit as human beings, inherit something. We have to inherit. Okay, now what is the opinion? How do people perceive basic income? It's completely counterintuitive. People won't believe it. In the villages, when we went, they thought this is some kind of a fraud.
Really?
That you will, first 2 months you will give the money, and after that you will take away their lands, or you will take away their animals, or whatever. So 10% of the village population, the rich farmers, refused to be part of our study. They said, we don't want this. You're taking our signatures. You may take away our lands. This may be a fraud. Why should anybody give anything free? Why are you giving it free to me? I mean, who are you and who am I? You see? That's what everybody says, that why should anybody give anything free? Why should government give it to be free? Things like that. So unless, like, okay, the only thing we have inherited from the industrial society is, if you are disabled, if you are in a period, all the entire welfare system is based on the exceptions. If you are unemployed for a short period of time, you will get some support from the government. If you are pregnant, you will get off for a couple of months.
Mhm.
If you are disabled, you may get a kind of an allowance from the government. Okay, but
It,
only that is
it
only
also
for,
depends on the country again.
exactly. Not all countries give, but even where they give, they stigmatize you, and all those issues are there. But
Mhm.
then that is the only exception where they give anything with all conditions they give. Nothing is given never unconditionally in this world. Okay, but then we are saying that is the way to go. That is the only future we have. I think, in mark my words, in 10 years from now, there will be a minimum guarantee income for everybody going to happen in the world, because we are moving towards a society where human beings are dispensable, are needed, not needed for the production, marketing, and distribution systems. They all can be done by technology and artificial intelligence. Look at the turnover of Uber or Amazon, and look at the number of people they employ. Just go back 50 years and just imagine, compare the turnover and number of people they employ. Look at turnover of Google and then number of people they employ. I mean, that is the direction we are going. But now we are growing exponentially, which means in the 10 years from now, by 2030, there are not going to be many jobs actually.
I agree with you, but I think the problem is more that a lot of people who will lose their job will not be able to find new jobs because the new jobs will require like new skills that aren't, that those people who will lose their old jobs, like even if we create new jobs, those people who lost their jobs won't get new jobs, right?
Yeah, but look at, even now, look at the existing jobs. They're all precarious jobs. Nobody is completely sure that I will stay in this job. Unlike the golden era, when once you entered a factory, you retired in that factory and got a golden handshake, and then you went and bought a patch of land and remained worked there the rest of your life. All that is gone now. I mean, you have to do 2, 3 jobs sometimes these days in order to survive and look after your family. So it's breaking up the whole notion of work being so, work is so central to you. It's not going to be central in future. So it's better that we redesign our society along those lines and take advantage of the technology for the entire mankind, rather than just a handful of people becoming like super rich. You can't imagine their wealth now.
Do you often like, because when I speak with people about UBI, I always hear the question like they have the feeling that people don't deserve to get that money for free. You know what I mean? Like, how do you explain to people that like you deserve that money only because you're a human? I guess that's difficult for a lot of people to understand. What do you think about that?
I think that is a serious flaw, because There are people who make a lot of money without working hard at all. There are people who make a lot of money without working at all. There are people who make a lot of money very young from their parents. Okay. So who is deserving, who deserves, and who doesn't deserve? So what we are saying is, like, for example, look at technology. Okay. Now, Stephen Hawking, who was a physicist, you remember, he was a very famous physicist.
Yeah.
He said very, very interesting things. Towards the end of his life, he said that tomorrow's technology or today's technology is capable of giving a good life to the entire mankind. People can lead a very, very good life, provided the owners of the machine or technology decide to share their wealth with the rest of the mankind.
Mhm.
But he said, in my lifetime, I'm not seeing that happening. That some people are becoming super rich and others, large number of people are becoming. So the point is about deserving. We are still using old language. We have to use new language. See, Einstein said a very famous thing that you can't solve the problems with the same language that originally created them, with the same algorithm that created them. So we have to
Yeah.
step out of that language and create a new language. Now, for example, who is there a perfect way of deciding how much a worker should be paid? No. Who decides that?
The
Is there an
market.
Sorry?
The market.
Yeah, but that the whole point is that market is not so holy.
Like, a lot of politicians have a different, and economists have a different opinion.
Absolutely. So we have to take a view concretely. We have to take a view to answer. Quick answer to your question is we have to take a view of what kind of a society we want to live in,
Mhm.
what kind of society we want to design. What we have to have an idea about that. We can't take the current orthodoxies as the ultimate truths. So, as a sociologist, at least I can say that if a particular design is possible, B also is possible. Because at the end of the day, society is man made. It is not. It is not made by any entity where you can't change things. You have to change things. You can change things. But then certain interest groups take over and create a language that suits them. But it's as human beings, we can also change that language. So
So,
then who deserves and who doesn't deserve is something that, for example, if you have 5 children, all 5 children are treated equally. So why is that only allowed inside a family, biological family? Why not bring those concepts in the public square and treat everybody as equally deserving?
so after you did your pilot studies, and they had that very good and very big impact on the local society, economy, and societies. Did it change the public opinion? Did it like change the language in those villages and in the country?
In the last 10 year, 12, 13 year, 10 years, I think since we actually started publishing our results,
Mhm.
10 or 12 years, in India, the discussion has moved a lot ahead. A lot of new policies are appearing now. I'll quickly give you a thing. Like in 2017, government itself came out with a proposal in government document saying that should we consider universal basic income for future? Is that the right way of going about? Now, after that, then you have a state where I'm living, Telangana state in South India.
Mhm.
They introduced a scheme with to only the farmers. So the entire state has about 6 million farmers. Okay, the owners of
Yeah.
the farm lands, and all the 6 million people. There was a scheme they introduced. All of them get a certain amount of money before each sowing season. There are two sowing seasons. Okay, unconditionally. They're just given cash unconditionally. It just goes into their bank accounts, and they don't have to cultivate. There's no condition that they should cultivate. Nobody is inspecting them. Just money is put in their bank accounts. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, this was a state that was considered a very backward state, agriculturally
Okay.
speaking.
What's the name of that
Now,
state?
Telangana,
Okay.
Telanga. Now it is becoming almost, it's overproducing. We don't know what to do with the produce. And
Oh.
there was this was also a response to a problem of farmer suicides. Okay. Now, at that time, there was a farmer suicide because a farmer will borrow money, he will dig a well, and the water doesn't come, so he can't repay the money, and then he take the stress and he goes and commits suicide. So a lot of people we have at that time. Now, this was I think this was a response that government had. So what is becoming interestingly popular is unconditionality.
1 second. Do you know if suicide is reduced after this?
Yeah, they have reduced. They have reduced. Productivity has gone up. Produce has gone up, and government also is making additional complementary policies of providing irrigation water, buying back the produce from the farmers. So many of these additional things. So I think in future we also should talk, in addition to the basic income policy, what are the complementary policies that we need to put in place? So there is when that happens, there will be again a multiplier effect. So that is one. Now, 4 or 5 states started emulating that.
Mhm.
Recently, there has been in the news political parties saying we should give wages to the housewife. This is very controversial. Okay, it has become very controversial. But that's also this age group, we will give money, this much cash unconditionally. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, the latest is that I have seen a state like Rajasthan just a week back, they have passed a bill, they want to pass a bill of minimum guarantee scheme for the poor. So it is not coming in the glorious 5-point formula of 5-point formula of BN. BN has definition of basic income says that it should be universal, it should be individual, it should be periodic and monthly, it should be only cash and not coupons, and it should be unconditional. These are the 5-point formula of BN. Now, all the 5 are not appearing, but some are appearing. Unconditionality is becoming, yeah, don't put conditions, don't have administrative mechanism. So to a government, I think the administering that kind of program is so easy. And they are getting political dividends also. So this party came to power with huge majority after that scheme was introduced. They introduced in January, and by December or later, they had a huge majority. So all the political parties are salivating now. Oh, wow, this seems to be something in this kind of program, unconditional cash transfer program. So I definitely feel very optimistic and positive about what has happened in the last 10 years in India. That the discussion, I think more and more people are convinced that seems to be a good idea. But then the moment you say 1.4 billion people, then you say, oh, where do you get the money from and all that? It is possible to get the money, but the point is that we should sit and be convinced about the idea and sit and discuss.
So let's ask the $1 billion question. When we see in India, the biggest country of the world, like one of the most special countries of the world, a UBI in our lifetimes?
I think so.
Yeah.
I will definitely see in my lifetime. In what form, how it will come, there's a learning curve. We should leave it open. It's not that, we can't do a blueprint of things like these matters. In fact, we are not able to do blueprints of anything for that matter. Even the universe, we look like we don't understand what the universe is and what the black holes are and, what the dark energy is. And we don't know. At a subatomic level, things are becoming even more hazier and hazier. So we should allow a learning curve to happen. But initiatives will definitely come in this direction. In the next 10 years, definitely something will happen in India and globally.
Does like the current Indian government under Modi, right,
Yeah.
support support the idea of UBI, like maybe on the long term, or like are they open to the idea?
Well, I think a concrete proposal went to the party, to Mr. Modi also. Uh, but it didn't go very far because I told you about this government document where
Mhm.
they wrote about this proposal. Uh, but then the opposition party of the main ruling party has been announcing program after program related to unconditional cash transfer. As a result, I think they have taken a kind of opposite position uh, compared to the other party. So it is not that they're ideologically opposed to it. It is possible that they, like I told you, this farmers thing. Mr. Modi also announced another program nationwide giving farmers cash assistance without conditions,
Mhm. So he's
unconditionally.
open to the idea.
Definitely, definitely. But whether that party will initiate anything in the near future, I don't know. But in a distant future, as I was saying, that it will become inevitable for every party to do that.
So it's now like a political question, but we can expect it to become like bipartisan in the future.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It will become a necessity. You see everywhere. For example, in Nigeria, yesterday I was reading in Nigeria, they are going to give to 12 million people for 6 months cash assistance because they have stopped their subsidies, oil subsidies, and they are taking a loan from the World Bank and then giving this money to people. Now, how this idea has come, whose idea it is, we just don't know. So there seems to be something happening at the ground level in the economies about people and about the livelihood systems that governments are forced to give cash.
But like we don't have a UBI in any country yet. So like I don't know, in different countries in India, who is like the main obstacle against an UBI? Is it like a lack of money? Is it that the society isn't open to it, like we discussed, or are it like lobbyists and politicians who don't like the idea? Like, why don't we have it yet?
Well, it goes against the very grain of, as I said, the way we have imagined the world of work and welfare, the way it was conceptualized during the industrial revolution, post-industrial revolution in the UK and rest of the Europe, the way welfare and work were conceptualized. Um, I think uh, that is changing now. So the welfare systems are no longer fitting into the current situation. They are like, square pegs in the round holes. So everybody is feeling that discomfort. Now, as so that ethos of that period is that you can't get everything, you have to control. You have to control people, you have to control welfare, you have to control things. But I think now we are realizing that the controls are not working. They're actually making people getting into poverty traps rather than get out of poverty. You see, those
Mhm.
things are not working anymore. So the point is that, first of all, this is, I said, counterintuitive in the sense that this is not the way we have done things in the past. So it will take time for people to accept something like this, you know, like, for example, this farmers program. Now, nobody's opposing that program.
Yeah.
Nobody's opposing that program. And it's really working well. And everybody is reaping benefits out of that. The government is reaping benefits by showcasing, political parties reaping benefits by coming back in elections, and farmers, of course, have cash in their hand to do their agriculture.
So like because we said that it's like it takes the control away from people, it gives people more freedom. Can we say that UBI is like a tool for more democracy?
Definitely, I mean, if you believe that giving freedom to people is democracy, I think this is economic freedom, isn't it?
But doesn't
Not just
that mean
voting.
that countries that are not democratic might be afraid to implement UBI, like they don't want to give people more freedom. Is that a real risk, or like is it something else? Like,
Yeah, there are kingdoms where there is no democracy. I don't know how this idea will play out in particularly the Middle East, where you
mhm,
have kingdoms there. There are no democratic elections. Democracy, as we understand democracy, as we, by
yeah,
we, I mean the Western democratic democracy model. Now, like for example, in China, this idea has not progressed much, but in Taiwan, this idea is progressing very well. So I don't know how to answer that question because uh, I think those regimes will not allow their control to go away.
that's a probable risk. But like from the other side, I think like being from the Middle East, I think that countries like Saudi Arabia and the Emirates are like some of the most generous countries when like treating their own citizens. So it's interesting to see like maybe they want to give their people like that more a better life conditions. We will see. We will see.
Yeah,
Uh,
but in those countries, the biggest issue really is that their native population is so small and the migrant population is so big.
mm,
So you can see vast difference in the statuses they have. Like for example, take Qatar. Qatar, I think 10% or less than 10% are the Emiratis. Not Emiratis. What are they called? The local.
Qataris,
Yeah,
Qataris.
Qataris.
Yeah,
Qataris. Yeah, UAE, Emiratis. So but then look at the life. I mean, there are too many questions. There are too many issues there to piece out in order to understand. But somebody like somewhere like Lebanon or Jordan, I don't know. Maybe they can be candidates for this. We don't know what will come.
I think we will. I think Lebanon it will be more challenging because of like it's more chaotic. Like
Uh,
just from an Arabic perspective, I think that the first UBIs we will see in the Arabic world will be probably like in those very rich Gulf countries, and maybe they will start like only for their own population, and
yeah,
then start like slowly to expand like for more people because like especially you see that there are a lot of politicians also there and like even from the royal families who are doing some reforms, but I think we will have to wait and see.
exactly.
um
Yeah, see, now where will the impulse to implement this idea come? Where will it come from? Now, the question um, is it going to come from administrative efficiency perspective?
mhm,
Definitely. You can get rid of a lot of bureaucracy if you have a policy like this, right? Yeah.
yeah,
Will it come from where will it come from? Like I don't know. I think uh, what it will do when you introduce a conversation about universal basic income in a country, it immediately raises questions about the existing system,
mhm.
which is the current welfare system. Now you start interrogating those systems and say, are these welfare systems or schemes or whatever policies you have, are they delivering what they are meant to deliver? Those questions will come. It's like I go to a doctor and tell the doctor, doctor, I want to live for 100 years, okay, or more than 100 years, and
Okay.
then, I tell him, but you tell me whatever what I have to do, I will do, but don't ask me to change my lifestyle, okay?
It's difficult, right?
Okay, so he will just throw me out of his clinic, right? So the basic question is that if you want to create a good society, you have to first identify what is bad now, what is not working now, what is counterproductive now. So you open the that's what the good thing about basic income debate discussion is, it opens analysis, it opens dialogue about everything that is going on and puts it to a stress test. Okay, so the impulse can come out of that kind of an analysis and say, this seems to be a better idea. So let me do a pilot here. Let me do a pilot there. Let us try out this idea if this is a good idea. Looks like it's having so many positive outcomes wherever it was piloted. So I think it's a learning curve. I think that curve will in each country will take its own time.
And which country do you think will be the first?
It's very
If you would
difficult
have
to
to
say.
bet, like, if you'd have to bet now, like $1,000 on it, which country will have the first UBI? Which will you choose?
I feel that it won't come in its glorious form, but it will be done in bits and pieces. I don't know. It could be a small country like Taiwan, or it could be a big country like India. But even in
Okay.
India, India is not one country actually speaking. It has so many states, and each one have their own autonomy and their own. So it could be that those smaller states will start initiating something like this, but may not be as a classical, like everybody in living in this territory like the way we define. Now, for example, I'm telling 6 million farmers are getting it. Okay, that's not a small number, and that's not a small budget. It's a
Yeah.
lot of money. Yeah. So it could be, I mean, a lot of moves are happening in India. A lot of people,
So,
politicians think that it's a radical idea and it's a good idea.
so your bet is on India. In one word, yes or no?
Some states of India, not all.
Okay.
It could be, or it could be, I don't know, where else. I know India more well. That's why I'm able to say. It could be South Africa also. You never know. You never know. In Latin America, which country will go forward? I don't know. I think we have now established regional hubs in 3 continents, so we will get a closer picture, a closer view of what's going on and where the potential is.
So you will not give me a clear question about that answer about this
Yeah,
question.
it's not easy to predict these matters. I didn't
Yeah.
expect in India also to move forward this kind of a discussion like what is happening now. People are openly talking about it.
Are you happy with the progress, or is it like bigger or smaller than you expected 10 years ago, 20 years ago?
See, if you we can't look at only basic income, which which is like an ideal thing for a society. It's not a scheme. It's not a poverty alleviation fix, but it's a material condition that you want to create for everybody. It's like that. You want to create a ground to stand on for people to stand
Mhm.
on, and then participate in the labor market. Okay,
Mhm.
so okay, this is one idea, but there are competing crises that are happening in the world today globally. If you see, there are many crises. Okay, number one crisis, of course, is the climate change. The whole environment question is there. Now there are efforts being made in that direction. Then this whole precaritization of workers, of population, work is becoming more and more precarious. There are no
Mhm.
stable jobs. This is a big problem, and then technology is coming and doing its own thing. So we have at least a handful of crises that we have to. So governments are all the time thinking about these crises. Okay. Now, in a particular context, where this will fit in the imagination of politics is a question. Number one. Number two is, as I'm saying, my hope lies in the fact that a universal basic income will become a necessity for every country. There won't be any other way of organizing a society.
Mhm.
So it is not only necessary, desirable, but I'm saying it's inevitable.
But couldn't like people who want to argue against you then say that you have like functioning welfare state countries and in systems in countries like Norway or in Denmark? Why should they change their welfare systems? They could ask you.
Well, yeah, I think Scandinavian countries are ideal welfare states. But the current welfare system, the problem with it is it stigmatizes and punishes those who are in the welfare system.
Mhm.
Okay, so it's not a good system in that sense. As a result, there's the mental illness in some of these societies is really growing. In general, a mental illness situation in Europe is growing because the societies are becoming more and more stressful. Now, even in those countries, there is a need to reform, and they can easily afford it. If you're talking about affordability, in fact, everybody can afford it. That's not the point. But if you're talking about affordability, they can easily afford it. I mean, look at Norway has the sovereign wealth fund. It's the largest, I suppose, not maybe second largest. I don't know. The largest is UAE
I
or
think
Dubai.
I think it's I think it's like I think it's the largest, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. So I think Gulf countries also have theirs almost competing with
Mhm.
them. But I mean, so because for example, what happened in Finland, they are interested in people coming back to the labor market. So they've tried basic income experiment in Finland. Okay.
Mhm.
So their interest was that why are people not wanting to get out of the welfare system? Why do they
Yeah.
want to stay there? You know?
Mhm.
Yeah. So that is what is called poverty trap in those countries. So they are having their own problem. That's why we have a basic income network in Sweden. There's a party in Sweden. There is in Norway, basic income Norway. In all these countries, in Finland, it's very active. So you ask those people, and in fact, you should interview one of them and ask this question, and why it is relevant to them. It is relevant to them because this is not about poverty. It will it will reduce poverty, no problem. That's not what one is saying. But when you give education to your child, it is not conditional upon the child getting a good career. The child will definitely get a good career if he studies well. But then you are giving it because it's your child.
Yeah. Because it's a human thing to do.
Absolutely. So it's also a human thing to do a basic income.
So you said that it would be like affordable in every country. And I think that that's like difficult to believe for a lot of our audience. So I will want to ask you, like, in a country like India, India has a relatively like India is probably one of the biggest five economies in the world, but India still has relatively low GDP per capita, and India has a lot of people.
Yeah.
So how could like a country like India, in your opinion, afford a UPI that is sustainable, like also on the long term, and that it's not like then it's an amount of money that really has an impact on the life of people.
Yeah. I'm not an economist, so I can't give you figures. But the question of affordability is actually not a question. I would first say that before we talk about whether we can afford it or not, let us put on the table the existing programs that we are running and their cost, and let us see how efficient they are. In India, for example, every year we spend about 20 to 30 billion dollars in a program, the largest food security program in the world, about 20 to 30 billion dollars every year. I think 25 billion dollars. Now, we accept that nearly 30-35% transmission losses happen because this is a grain which is procured from the farmers and it is distributed all over the country, the length and breadth of the country. There's an organization called Food Corporation of India.
Is there
So
also corruption?
I would only say transmission losses.
So there is no corruption.
And how it happens, I don't know, but transmission losses are there. You send 100 tons from here, only 70 tons reach the last mile. Okay. So where's the 30 go? We have to investigate. I think it's government's job to investigate that thing. Now, we have to ask questions like that. Is it really, I mean, is it not criminal that we are wasting our resources? So let us put all our current systems, welfare system, to welfare schemes to the stress test of efficiency. Okay. Then we realize there's a lot of money. Number one. Number two, Look at the natural resources. How are we managing natural resources? Are we managing it in the way thinking of the future generations, or how what is the income we are getting from the natural resources, and who is gaining from the natural resources? You know, natural resources belong to people. People are the owners, not the government. Government is only a custodian. I think there is a Supreme Court judgment in India to say that exactly. When there was cases about mines and what was happening in the whole giving of the mining contracts. So if we ask all those questions, okay, that's number two. Number three, um, you start from very low amount. Doesn't matter. You give a small amount of money, but build an infrastructure for the entire country, for every normal resident, I would say, not citizen, because there are many citizens who live outside the country and many non-citizens who live inside the country. So
Yeah.
any normal resident is the person we say should be given, but that is the universal part. Now, I'll give you a small example of what happened in Nepal. In Nepal, in way back in 1996, they introduced a pension scheme
Okay.
for people above 72 years. They started with $1. $1. The pension for the old age person above 72 years, which was universal for
Yeah.
people above 72.
Yeah.
$1 they started. Okay.
And the
So,
poverty and that was above the poverty rate, right?
yeah, I mean, $1 per month
Yeah.
at that time.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. $1. So now what happened subsequent, the political economy takes over. Okay. Subsequently, what happened in subsequent elections, the party started promising more. So one became 5, and then 5 became 10, and currently it is 40.
Okay, so it has like you have to
$40,
adjust to inflation, but
and from 72 it became 70 it became 68, and now they are talking about 65. So that's universal. Everybody gets, from prime minister to the last laborer gets. That's pension. That is policy. Okay. Now the point, good thing is that they have created the infrastructure. Once the infrastructure is created, then it becomes. So my proposal to some governments we are talking to is that create the infrastructure, give a small amount of money, then the political economy takes over.
hey, interesting.
Yeah.
So
So don't
I
start
think
with $100. Then you will say it is a non-starter. Start with $1.
I
Ensure that
think we
everybody gets it.
will. I think we will have to do a second, or interview with you. I think we have
I
surpassed 1 hour.
know. Just got lost.
But
You were asking questions, and I'm going on talking.
and it was really interesting, and I think our audience will also enjoy it. And we definitely will need at least one other episode with you to continue
Okay, fine. You're most welcome. How much time did we spend?
I think we're just about like above 1 hour. So
Wow.
I want to my final question is like for people who hear now for the first time about UBI, or like who want to learn more about it, or who are interested in it and want to spread the message or like play a part in implementing it. What is like the message you want to give the people, such people, you know?
Yeah, I will say, I mean, at a generic level, I will say that don't be satisfied with the status quo. Don't think from the program that you have inherited from the society. Think of breaking these barriers, these programs that you have inherited from the society, and think of building a better society. Like, think of building a better yourself, think of building a better family, your family, and think of building a better society. And to that sort of, what kind of, what is the design of that society, how it should be. So imagine, I think, just imagine, let your imagination go. So in which case, you will not say, oh, is it practical? Don't ask that question. That's a stupid question, actually. Because if you are practical, you are only repeating yesterday into tomorrow. You're not changing anything. But we have to change a lot of things. Technology is changing, but we are not changing. See, technology has advanced from when I was doing my PhD, a computer occupied a room as big as this. Okay, today we are carrying computer with 1 TB memory in my pocket, right?
Yeah.
But last 50 years, in what way have we become better societies, more evolved societies? Where is the evolution happening? See, that's the question we should ask. And but what is that better society? What is that better me that should happen? So I think everybody should think, and basically is one idea that really opens your imagination and makes you start thinking differently about society. Similarly, there could be many other ways of, I mean, for example, the whole post-growth movement is talking about interesting things. How the world should be much more green-oriented rather than consuming oriented, you know.
I guess that's a
Consumer.
very different debate we'll have to open another time. I don't
Yes.
know it now. But like one last final question. If you would have to, I know you're a person who likes music. So if you would have to just like choose one song for UBI or like describe UBI by one song, which song would you choose?
Oh my God. I will tell you in my part 2 version. Okay. It's very difficult. Yeah. I mean, like, imagine imagine that,
Nice choice.
isn't it? Yeah. That's
Yeah,
something
John
like that.
Lennon. John
Yeah.
Lennon, right?
John Lennon, imagine.
I
Yeah.
would have
But
chosen. I would have chosen "I Want to Break Free" by Queen, but
absolutely, absolutely. I completely resonate with that. Yeah, we should break free of the programs that are fed into us and think completely radically and innovatively and imaginatively. Okay, Ahmed.
Thank you
Good.
very, very much. And
My
I'm
pleasure.
sure we'll have another episode.
My
And
pleasure.
yeah,
Super.
thank you very
You
much.
know, the best thing about an interview is not the speaker. The best thing about the interview is the interviewer. The way you ask questions inspires. Okay, bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you again. Bye. All the best with your podcast.